From the Prime Minister's abrupt resignation to inflation rates outpacing wages and the global markets being on shaky grounds, the last few months haven't been very rosy for Canada. These political and economic dramas have left people wondering if Canada's getting poorer. Will the economy survive, or are they headed for a financial freefall? Stick around to find out in this video. Canada is a country that has it all: majestic mountains, beautiful coastlines, and a rich history tied to its natural resources like timber, minerals, and oil. These resources help build the nation's economy and have been a cornerstone of its identity. With all this natural wealth and a friendly, welcoming spirit, Canada has always symbolized strength and prosperity. But lately, Canada's been going through some political drama that's got everyone talking. On January 6, 2025, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced that he'd be stepping down.
I intend to resign as party leader, as Prime Minister.
This came after months of tension brewing within his Liberal Party, not to mention the resignation of his right-hand woman, Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland, just weeks earlier in December 2024. Freeland's exit solidified Trudeau's decision, fueling the already blazing fire of political issues. And let's not forget the outside pressure. With U.S. President-elect Donald Trump breathing down Canada's neck, threatening new tariffs on Canadian goods, Trudeau was stuck between a rock and a hard place. His leadership was under fire, even from within his own party, and it became painfully obvious he wasn't the guy to lead him into the next election. So, he made the call to resign and let the Liberals pick a new leader. Trudeau's resignation sent shockwaves across the political and economic landscape. The Canadian dollar especially took a nosedive, sliding down below 70 cents USD for the first time since the pandemic era.
The value of the loonie is low, really low, dipping below 70 cents US for the first time since March 2020.
And Bloomberg's Canada Economic Policy Uncertainty Index skyrocketed to a record-breaking 650. But here's the thing. Before this political drama, Canada was already juggling serious financial issues. As of January 2025, Canada's national debt is approximately $1.4 trillion. Every day, that debt balloon grows by more than $100 million, and every second, the nation shells out over $1,200 just in interest payments. To keep things looking better, Canada focuses on its net debt, gross debt minus financial assets, which paints a slightly less terrifying picture. The net debt-to-GDP ratio is around 13.28%, which is way better than the G7 average of 95%. So, while it's not all doom and gloom, the weight of that debt is still hanging over the country's future. As of April 2024, the gross debt-to-GDP ratio stood at 104.7%, putting Canada in a rougher spot than nations like Germany or the United Kingdom. The country's smaller economy and lack of a reserve currency make it more vulnerable than economic giants like the US or Germany. If Canada doesn't resolve these contradictions soon, it risks a reputation downgrade, much like the Northern Peso debacle of the mid-90s. Adding fuel to the fire is growing trade tensions. US President-elect Donald Trump's recent threat to add 25% tariffs on Canadian exports could seriously blow the economy.
Well, we're thinking in terms of 25% on Mexico and Canada.
Canada's economy faces significant challenges, and trade relations with the U.S. are just one part. But trade isn't the only problem. Canada's labor productivity is in free fall, and that's a big deal. After 6 straight quarters of productivity decline, the issue could stifle economic growth and lower living standards if tackled head-on. Add to that the usual suspects like soaring housing prices, stubborn inflation, and burdensome regulations, and it's clear Canada has some serious work to do. Productivity is the scoreboard that guides how efficiently an economy performs. It's about how much output, goods or services, you can squeeze from the inputs, like labor, money, or equipment used to produce it. In Canada, labor productivity, GDP divided by the total hours worked, is the main problem. However, other factors like capital and public sector productivity also adds to the issue. So what exactly is dragging Canada down? It boils down to several issues: weak investment, limited innovation, and structural barriers. While Trudeau's 2024 budget made some moves, like pouring money into AI and research grants, it's clear that these efforts are baby steps when a giant leap is needed. Canada's long-term economic success hinges on taking bolder measures to supercharge productivity. But why does productivity matter so much? Because it's a crystal ball for future economic health. When labor productivity is high, the same workforce can generate more output with fewer resources. This boosts competitiveness, drives economic growth, and raises wages and better living standards. Conversely, sluggish productivity means stagnant wages, slower growth, and headaches for central banks trying to manage inflation. Canada's ability to tackle this issue will make or break its economic future. Interestingly, Canada's productivity has consistently declined, even as far back as decades ago. In the 1950s, productivity rates were booming at an impressive 5% of GDP. However, since the 1970s, the rate has steadily decreased, sitting at around 1% of GDP since the early 2000s. What's more concerning is the recent trend. In the last 5 years, productivity has flatlined at 0%, which raises alarms for the country's economic future. Several global events have only worsened Canada's productivity struggles. The 2008-2009 financial crisis, the 2015 oil crisis, and the COVID-19 pandemic all took a toll on the economy. More recently, disruptions like the shift to remote work and the supply chain issues caused by the war in Ukraine have contributed to further stagnation. These trends suggest Canada may continue to face economic underperformance in the coming decade. Domestically, inefficiencies within the public sector are holding Canada back. Government regulations and bureaucratic processes slow things down, and varying provincial rules create barriers to interprovincial trade, increasing business costs. Canada's infrastructure is also often sluggish, with slow port turnaround times and delays in major projects like pipelines and transportation networks. These factors contribute to Canada's underwhelming performance on the World Bank's Ease of Doing Business Index, where it ranks a distant 23rd, trailing behind the United States in 6th. One big reason Canada's productivity is declining is investment, or more accurately, the lack of it. Compared to the U.S., Canadian companies are far less likely to put their money into growth and innovation. The government isn't picking up the slack, as much of its funding goes towards less productive sectors. Think construction to manage the housing crunch, retail, and hospitality to tackle immigration-driven demographic shifts. Meanwhile, critical areas like healthcare and education are left wanting, which keeps public sector productivity stuck in a rut. On top of all that, a steady stream of foreign investment is flowing out of the country, draining money that could have fueled growth at home. Canada also has an innovation problem, and it's tied to how its economy is set up. The market is dominated by a few big players: banks, telecoms, and energy giants who have the resources to innovate. But here's the catch: these benefits rarely touch smaller businesses. And in Canada, 98% of companies are small, with fewer than 100 employees. These businesses often lack the cash, scale, and resources to grow or adopt cutting-edge technologies, leaving them stuck in a cycle of low productivity. Then there's Canadians' geography and climate, which don't favor the economy. The population is scattered across a massive country, making transportation a logistical headache. Throw in harsh winters, and you have a recipe for delays and inefficiencies. Regarding productivity, Canada can't help but compare to its southern neighbor, the U.S. Despite their similarities, like shared financial systems and values, their productivity trajectories are very different. Over the last decade, the U.S. has seen steady gains, while Canada has struggled to break even. Between 2021 and 2023, Canada's productivity growth was stuck at an embarrassing 0.1%, effectively going nowhere. But this isn't a new story. In 2000, Canada's economy was 82% as productive as America's. By 2020, that number has dropped to 77%. This long-term decline suggests that Canada's issues aren't just about global challenges. They're baked into the system. If these trends don't change, Canada risks falling further behind. leaving its economy a stalemate while others race ahead. When it comes to labor productivity, Canada is trailing behind the U.S. The International Labor Organization ranks Canada 26th in the world, tying with Spain and Hong Kong, while the U.S. sits much higher at 13th. Even after the pandemic, the U.S. has maintained its productivity high, which still surprises many policymakers. This productivity boost is attributed to a combination of factors: substantial investment, innovation-driven advancements, labor flexibility, and smooth transportation networks. However, Canada's productivity struggles don't only affect its economy, they have a ripple effect on the U.S. Due to the strong integration between the two economies, Canada's lagging productivity could eventually hurt sectors that rely on cross-border trade and investment. If things worsen, it could harm U.S. industries, which both countries are keen to avoid. So, what can be done? Fixing Canada's productivity problem requires a multifaceted approach. Economists suggest the public sector should tackle issues like interprovincial trade barriers, streamline regulations, and rethink tax policies to encourage domestic investment. At the same time, innovation, especially in AI and key industries, should be prioritized, taking full advantage of Canada's highly educated workforce and vast natural resources. For these changes to work, however, businesses and workers need to feel the benefits, which means the rewards must be shared fairly across the country. Canada's economy is built on a strong foundation, ranking as the 9th largest economy in the world with an exceptional GDP per capita. However, to indeed increase productivity and move past the current stagnation, the government and private sector need to step up and make profound changes. By enforcing policies that foster innovation and investment, Canada can pave the way for sustained economic growth. This would improve productivity and enhance Canadians' quality of life, ensuring a more prosperous future for the country. So, is Canada growing poorer? Not exactly. While the country faces many issues currently, Canada's solid economic foundation and wealth of natural resources continue to support its prosperity. However, the government and private sector must take proactive steps to ensure continued growth and prevent falling behind. If these challenges are addressed, Canada can continue to thrive and improve the quality of life for its citizens. That's all for this video on whether Canada is getting poorer and the fear around the nation's economic decline. What's your take on the current political climate in Canada? Let us know in the comments section and enjoy our other videos.